Hi, and welcome back to Rhiannon in Conversation. Today I'm going to chat with Claire Burley, and this is for Neurodiverse Sport. Now, rather than me introduce Claire and all the fantastic things she's doing for the neurodiverse community, I'm going to hand over to Claire and ask her to just tell a little bit about herself and what you're doing.
Hi, so I'm Claire. I am a rower. I used to row for the Hong Kong national team, and now I row at kind of like an elite club level, but hoping maybe to kind of go back into rowing a bit more. We'll see where that goes. So I am late diagnosed ADHD. I've kind of known I've had it my whole life, but it was only kind of confirmed this year. And I basically am just, I try and kind of spread awareness around kind of near my neurodiversity and like how it's impacted me kind of as an athlete and as a person. I kind of spread a lot of stuff on my social media, just about kind of self compassion and self advocacy, and kind of being kind to yourself and just learning to understand yourself. And I'm also kind of on this journey, learning to understand myself as well, and just kind of taking everyone with me. So yeah.
I think that's lovely. And I think from like a late diagnosed perspective, um, there is that thing of having to learn who you are, but also how to have that like self-compassion and find a way to learn who you are, but learn to love the parts of you that are
Yeah.
maybe a bit hard sometimes.
Yeah, and I think like it's hard sometimes because I think on like a surface level, like I can look at myself kind of objectively and kind of say like I'm a pretty cool person. Like I know the stuff I've done is pretty amazing, but then when you're kind of in your own body sometimes it's kind of really hard to listen to those thoughts. So I'm really just trying like now just trying to kind of take a step back for myself really and just kind of view myself how I feel like I would view a friend.
Do you think that's a bit kind of imposter syndrome-y in a way?
Yeah, I think it is. Like, I think, again, I think with many people who are late diagnosed, especially, we grow up kind of being told certain stuff about ourselves. And I think a lot of people say, like, oh, when you speak to kids, they say, oh, they're a child, they're just going to forget that. But most of my core memories are from when I was a kid, right? So it being told as a kid that I'm not trying hard enough or I'm different and I need to act like other people, and now kind of as an adult kind of feeling the same way. So it is kind of imposter syndrome because it's like, well, I was always told this, so now I feel like I can't be this. um so yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but
No, I think it does. I think there's a lot of, uh, as we know, don't we, that a lot of traits of kind of ADHD, autism, neurodiverse kind of things, they're so poorly misunderstood. And I think that people who are late diagnosed, and I am going to include like men in this as well. I know we're obviously both female here, but we've grown up being told, or at least in my experience, and I think what you're saying, that a lot of our traits have been seen as us being lazy or being oversensitive or different to everybody else in a bad way. And it is hard to rewrite that or reframe that narrative in our minds.
yeah, no, definitely. And it's things like, you know, as an athlete, for example, I kind of burn out all the time. And I actually only realized recently that my burning out was actually more than burning out because I've been in the cycle for years. I mean, even since before I was an athlete. And like the most recent time it happened, I realized just not even through doctors or anything, it was through conversations with other people and then speaking to my nutritionist as well that I'd actually completely fried my central nervous system because it was just, and again, it was that whole think because I'd always been told I wasn't trying hard enough, I was trying even harder, even though I was already working hard. And it's not even one of those things where, like, because as an adult now as well, I have people around me saying, we can see that you're working hard. You don't need to work harder. But when you're kind of already, when you already have that feeling of like, as a kid, when you were working that hard, you were told you weren't working hard enough. So you feel like, no, I'm not. I know you think I am, but no, I'm not anymore. So you push yourself even further. And so, like, that really, like, I had to take some time out of training, and which was really annoying because I'm preparing to for a really big race next month. So it was one of those things as well where I was like, I can't just stop, because what happens if I do stop, and if I get weaker and all of this kind of stuff. And then it really took a lot for me, to kind of just really, really take that step back. And again, I think working with loads of different charities now as well, like, shout out to like the True Athlete Project, and they're one of the people, one of the charities that really push for like compassion in sport and self-compassion for athletes, and kind of doing the stuff I've been doing with them as well has really taught me just to really take that step back. And then I really had to as well just kind of see myself for how other people see me, which is hard as well, because when you think that other people see you in a certain way, like internally, even though you may not know that's true, it's hard to kind of then kind of view yourself how people actually see you. And it, I think for me, it was more about, if I had a friend who was doing the exact same stuff as me, how would I treat them? And then kind of follow that kind of path. So it's hard because I'm so, like, it's just in my nature now to just push really hard and push through everything. So just forcing myself in a sense to kind of take that step back, and to really listen to myself, and to really, show compassion for myself and give myself that time to rest, and not compare myself to like what I think other people are doing, or even if other people might be doing more than me, realizing as well that I've been doing more than everyone else for like, 5, 6, 10 years or whatever. So of course, the way my body is going to react and my mind is going to react is going to be so different from other people around me.
There's so much to unpack in what you just said. Like everything sort of was like making these like thoughts kind of ping in my mind of things we can discuss, because there's so many layers I think that you've kind of mentioned there, with the first of all being burnt out and realizing that you can be kind of burnt out and you can be tired and your body can be done, but you can also be mentally burnt out.
Yeah.
And when you put those two things together, which, when you're a professional athlete and you're training and you're getting to that burnout stage because you are constantly striving to improve and be better and get stronger, and then you've got that kind of neurodivergent aspect that's coming in that does make that recovery more difficult, because you are wanting to push more and more because you've been told your whole life you're not doing enough, and why can't you keep up with the others? And there's just so many aspects to that that are really hard to navigate, and I think to identify what is what. And I think that my heart goes out to a lot of people and children who are probably experiencing the same thing, where they might be doing sports and they're pushing and they're getting to that burnout stage, and but nobody's like picked up on this neurodivergent thing, or that they might be a bit different. And I find that just, it really gets me that there are people that are still struggling with those things coming
Yeah.
together like that.
Yeah. And I think as well, you have to put, on top of that, you're also kind of masking in your everyday life outside of your sport. So when you have all of that extra energy going into something else too, it does become hard. And then you add on kind of like, interception difficulties, and not kind of understanding how to regulate your body, or like how you feel, and again, not having the people, like people around you, realize as well. Because I think sometimes, people see what they want to see, and I think, you know it does take a certain type of person to be able to kind of see somebody who is neurodivergent, or even like undiagnosed neurodivergent, and actually see like how they're acting, and to step in. Otherwise, and also, like, I mean, fair enough, people don't, if you're around people like, what, a couple days a week or something like that, they're not, not 24/7, they're not going to know what goes on in your mind and what your life is like outside of the sport. So there's just so much to go into that as well, which makes it even harder.
Yeah, and you can mask for 2 days, or you can try your hardest to fit in and blend in, and then when you get home, you can just shut down and you're exhausted. It's a thing. It's hard. Yeah, and
Understanding like when, or like allowing yourself to take moments, um, to kind of take yourself away from the situation before it gets to the point where like you actually need to just fully like disassociate. And like in recent times, like, well, like in the last couple of weeks, since kind of starting to recover a bit more from my central nervous system completely breaking down and everything, it's kind of like I've had to actually like block out moments where I like consciously make the effort to take care of myself, rather than like before I would literally just get home, um, go into my room and just hide in my room, sit on the sofa, do absolutely nothing, um, and just, you just feel that kind of mental burnout and like just overwhelm, and just the whole day pouring on you. Whereas like I found that if I started to kind of make the times in the day where I go, okay, now I'm going to, like mindfulness, for example. I've gotten really into that in the last kind of couple of weeks. I was always into it, but not as much as like now. Like now making the conscious effort to actually kind of say like, okay, I'm gonna just sit here, or do some mindfulness for like 10 minutes, um, and just have that time alone, where I can work on my thoughts. That has been so helpful for me. And it's also realizing that like the days when I really don't want to do that are the days that I actually really need to do it. Um, and it's getting to the point now as well where I actually kind of look forward to those times that I've set out to kind of just be by myself and allow myself to slow down.
I definitely get that. Um, I learned if about a year ago that I needed to schedule time to recover. And for me, so I only got into exercise really over the last 2 years. Before that, I avoided it like the plague, really, being honest, because of my own sensory overwhelm.
Mm.
But um, I would do what you do. So I'd go out and I'd come home, and it would be I would put the telly on in a dark room and doom scroll on a phone. And then I would kind of be beating myself up for not being able to go and put the washing away or walk the dog who desperately needs a walk because I just can't do it.
Yeah,
And making time for mindfulness is what then allows me to do those things actually that are hard and not beat myself up about it, because it's that accepting you need time to recover helps you then, I think, be able to recover quicker, but also
yeah,
kind of find that energy to do things. It's
yeah,
really,
definitely.
really important to take that time to decompress.
And I think as well, it's like also about just letting yourself know that if you don't take that time, not to beat yourself up about it. Because I think there's this whole thing as well, and it's kind of like, I'm sure you found it when you kind of were starting to get into exercise and stuff like that. It's like, you miss the gym, one
Oh,
gym session, and you're like, oh my god, it's the end of the world, I can't do this anymore. And I think it's just allowing yourself to kind of say like, okay, I missed one day, or I missed 2 days, but that's okay. I'll get back into a routine of it again, and just not to beat yourself up about missing one or two sessions. Um, I mean, I found that in like journaling as well. I've like finally, I think, found like a good way to journal, because before it used to be, I had one of those, actually I have it right here, like the 6 minute diary thing, which
oh yeah.
was Yeah, it was great for a bit, and I like the concept of it. And I did it really well for a little bit. But I'd like beat myself up every time I missed a day, or I missed like 1 6 minutes to do it, and then just, I mean, it works for people, and I'm not saying like it's, I think it's a great concept, and I think like when I was writing in it, I really loved it. But yeah, just kind of if I missed a day, then I'd miss like 5 days, and then I'd be like, I think yeah, I'm like halfway through that, and it's been like I don't know, like 3 4 months since I last wrote in it, and then now I realize actually with journaling, it's just about if something pops into my mind, then I'll just write it down, and I don't need to do it every day. I can just do it as and when I feel like it, and knowing that has been really useful for me, and like I think taking the time away from like all the doom scrolling and stuff like that just kind of has been more useful in that. I've been listening to so many podcasts actually recently just about kind of like um, being distracted and all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things I learned well, not learned, but like it was about how like we're constantly looking for distractions anyway, whether it be like scrolling through a phone, um, reading a book, listening to music, whatever. Um, but creativity comes to you when you're not distracted by those things, if that makes sense. I'm like really badly breaking down what I heard on that podcast, but basically it's about
No,
like
I get it. Yeah.
yeah,
Are you
yeah.
saying that our brains are like wired to be looking for distraction? I think.
I think so. It's kind of, I think, and also like again because of like technology and stuff now, um, it's so easy to be distracted because it is hard to kind of sit with your own thoughts. But I was all like, I just kind of, it took me back to like when I was a kid, for example, and I'd spend so much time just staring into space, like making up stories in my head. And they used to be so vivid. And like as an adult, I do that less and less because I'm faced with so many other like distractions, which, will spike my dopamine, but isn't necessarily healthy.
Yeah, and they absorb so much time and
Yeah,
energy, actually.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I think I've gone on like a hyper podcast obsession, to be honest. And it became like, and I've listened to quite a few about being mindful and, journaling and things and productivity. And then the other day, it was this week actually, I went down from a work day for lunch and I had a podcast on in my headphones and I started to eat my lunch. And I was still listening to the podcast and I was like, oh gosh, just no, turn it off, take a moment, eat your lunch, like have a break,
Yeah,
and it's the only time I watch TV actually is when I'm eating. And we don't eat at a table, but I will only watch TV when I'm eating because otherwise I spend hours watching the same Netflix shows again and again. And I don't do anything productive with my time. So now I kind of
yeah,
look forward to lunch and I remember to eat lunch because I want to like actually switch off and switch on the telly for like 20 minutes.
yeah,
And identifying when good habits can also become not so good is important. And I think that that sort of links back to that 6 minute journaling. It's like a really good habit to be into journaling. But then when you're annoyed with yourself because you can't meet the expectations that a book is giving you, then you start this like negative cycle of, oh, I'm just not good enough and I can't even journal or be
yeah,
mindful. It's really difficult. And I think I am surrounded by notebooks. The way that I journal is I have like multiple notebooks and I just grab whatever one is sort of around at the time. And for
yeah,
me, it's like putting the pen to paper, something about that that feels good.
yeah. Yeah, like the way I kind of journal is I'll sometimes either kind of come up with thought and my journal will be there. A lot of the times recently, it's been when I've been cycling and just kind of either listening to a podcast or just kind of in my own thoughts. And then like I'll suddenly just have a thought and then like put it into my phone. And then when I get home later or whenever I get near my journal, I'll go and like write that into my journal as well. The first time I did it, I can actually I keep them all on my phone as well. Um, And they're just like really, really like small things where like maybe it's like a realization about myself, or like um yeah, it would just be like a realization about myself, or just a thought, like an idea or something like that. Um, like literally the first one I put was me reflecting on like when I was in the depths of an eating disorder, and like I just had this memory, and I was like, well, I've written here, was I happy because I was skinny, or was I happy because I just got out and did stuff by myself, and in turn became more confident around others? So, because that came from a memory of when I was in that eating disorder, and I remember I just like did loads of stuff by myself, and I was like not afraid to as well. And I was like, maybe that's where my confidence at that time came from, and it wasn't actually because of like the way I looked or I thought I looked. So that was an interesting thought, and I just have like loads of these as well. Just it's quite a long list now, but I've all copied them all into like my little journal as well, because yeah, it helps kind of solidify it in my brain a little bit more, which is nice.
Putting it in one place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like being able to kind of go back through it as well and just kind of see how my thought process has changed. Like, I mean, I've only been doing it for like 2 months or a month. Yeah, 2 months, I think. And like just seeing how my thought process has changed over the 2 months has been really interesting as well.
Definitely can help remind you of your growth. And
Yeah,
we need to be reminded when we're in the phases where we don't remember how far we've come.
yeah, definitely agree. And just celebrating like the small wins as well, and noticing like, even if like for me, for example, like my small win has been I now spend a lot more time in the communal area of where I live, because I think I'm just a bit less overwhelmed now, but also like it's getting past that, because I get quite bad social anxiety, which gets worse obviously when I'm a bit more overwhelmed, and my brain doesn't work properly, and so kind of initially riding that wave a little bit of like the anxiety the first few times I did it. And now, like, I will quite happily just sit out in the communal area, just chill. Maybe sometimes I'll have my phone with me or something, but just and being more comfortable around there. And that's like a win for me, because 2 months ago I would just lock myself in my room.
And when you were locking yourself in your room, I don't want to kind of explain why you were doing it because I'm not sure. But in my mind, because I am very similar, it's you feel like you're safeguarding yourself by shutting yourself away. At least I did.
Yeah.
And
For me, it was literally like that. I kind of get to the end of the day and just be like, mentally, I just feel like my social battery was drained, and I just couldn't be around people, or like, and I just physically just not feel great at all. Like, I think part of it is like, yeah, just like the body image, self confidence thing, and everything like that. And I'm just like, all I wanted to do was like get changed into my pajamas and just lie on my sofa, scroll, watch TV, like just distract myself from anything. Um, and yeah, you feel like you're protecting yourself, but actually you're just kind of pushing yourself away from everything. And it's a really hard thing to kind of break out of as well. Like, I think the only reason I really broke out of it was because I just completely like mentally and physically broke down. And have it I literally just had to force myself to like slowly pick up the blocks and like slowly pick myself up again to get out of it. um and like, yeah, there are definitely days when I really want to do that as well. But I also think because I've kind of given myself a little bit more clarity of mind now, um and kind of been able to like allow myself to be a little bit more aware of myself as well, I kind of can see, like, for example, like when my brain does go completely like, when that ADHD noise gets really, really loud, I'm a lot more aware of it now. And it's kind of like, okay, what can I do now, to kind of help myself get out of it. And I think it's in making myself slow down a little bit more, because when it's so tempting to, like, when your mind is just so noisy, um, and you feel like you're in like fight or flight all the time, it's so tempting to just rush through everything. And actually, what you really need to do is just actually just completely slow it all down, because that's when you avoid making mistakes, and you avoid any of like the ADHD tax or anything like that. I mean, a really good example is last weekend. I didn't let myself slow down. I was like irritable, tired, my brain was messed up. And in that, I, number one, left my keys at home, which wasn't too bad. But the second one was a lot more expensive, which is I dropped my AirPods case somewhere, which wasn't yet connected to my Find My iPhone, because I was like, I'll put that off. So yeah,
ADHD.
ADHD. Yeah, had to pay the ADHD tax on that. But because that happened as well, I was like, whoa. I mean, it was an expensive way for me to like realize I needed to do this. But because that happened, I was like, whoa, okay, I need to chill out. The reason all of that's happened is because I've been rushing myself all day. So I just need to like take that step back and just slow it all down. So yeah, and it was like, yeah, it was annoying for a bit. Like it was really hard, especially for that like afternoon. But once I had like a rest and everything like that, slept on it, the next day I felt so much better. So yeah,
Learning to not beat yourself up about it because of
yeah,
how you are. It's
yeah,
very ableist. We do it. I mean, I do it all the time as well. Damn, why, like,
yeah,
couldn't I have just? And actually, no, I couldn't have just, because if I could have just, I would have done it, and I would have set the Find Your iPhone thing, and it would have been okay. But I think it's probably a lesson that we all go through at some point or another. And it's a tough one, but it definitely emphasizes that need to take a breath, I think sometimes.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
it's
And
very
actually,
important.
a really good tip for people who do lose things to their ADHD tax or like neurodiverse tax often is, I have like a little savings pot specifically for this reason,
That's
in my
amazing.
phone. And I just put a little bit of money in it, like, every once in a while. And then, like, when stuff like this does happen, then I can be like, okay, well, at least I have some money put away for this specific reason. So, yeah.
I love that you're preparing in advance for
Yeah.
your ADHD tax.
Yeah.
No, it's a good thing. Like, I think because you do then start thinking, I don't have the money, I don't do that. Oh God, why could I, not have done it? And it's that constant kind of punishing ourselves for it. Whereas at least if you've
Yeah.
got that, I don't want to say like backup or security, but if you've been able to think to yourself, well, this may happen at some point, and let's prepare for the eventuality where my neurodiversity does impact my life, and I need some extra money to get something I've lost, or whatever. Then it's there, and I think that's actually a really good little tip that I should probably take away from this.
Yeah, I mean, it's also one of those things as well, like I didn't really think about until I kind of did accept my diagnosis a little bit more, and kind of, like I didn't even want to say I was neurodivergent for a long time, even with like, this was before the ADHD diagnosis, but when I kind of knew I had ADHD, because I just was like, I'm still normal, if that makes sense. I mean, I am normal, but like, it was like, I couldn't really, because everyone, I think it's just because like, yeah, just pressure from outside and stuff like that, but I just didn't really associate myself, or didn't want to be called neurodivergent. um and I think since kind of really accepting that for myself as well, has allowed me to kind of do so much more for myself, like, like having a little savings pot. And it's allowed me as well just to kind of become more aware of like, what am I like, what 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 are my needs, um and to prepare for those as well. And I think especially in the times when mentally I'm like I have a lot more clarity and stuff, it's for me it's a good way to kind of set up for when mentally I'm not going to be that clear or like in a bit of a panic and stuff. So,
Yeah, I think it's when you can accept that there is something different and you can then put those just things in place to assist you in challenging times, it
yeah,
can really revolutionize, I think, your whole life.
yeah,
Um, my big thing is I am very noise averse. That's my big thing. So when the rabbits make a noise, it's me really. Like I can't deal with the noise of them scratching the floor in this one place they go every time. Um, but before my diagnoses, I would get frustrated and then I would just sort of be like, I'd persevere through the discomfort and not identify that I needed to stop the noise or remove myself from the noise and I'd be okay. And I would tolerate, whereas actually inside I'm bubbling up and then I'd kind of reach a point where I can't function. And it might not be the rabbits because that they'd be really bad if they were that bad. They're not, they're lovely. But if I'm in a shop and the shop is really busy and or a tube and a big group of people come on and it's the noise of a till with the dinging or a bell on the door if you're in a restaurant and certain things can set me off. And now I've got big, like not these ones, but big overhead noise cancelling headphones that I wear pretty much all the time when I'm out of the house. And I never would have done that before because, to be honest, I don't love music. I get a bit distracted with music, so I don't listen to it much. I listen to
yeah.
podcasts on like times three because my mind can't, I'm like always ahead of what they're saying.
Oh
Um,
right,
so I never really would, I just wouldn't do it. I'd just go out like, I'm going to say like naked in the sense of my ears would just take all this, the battering. Whereas now I know that that's an issue. So I wear my headphones and I've got little loop earplugs. I don't know if you've heard of those before,
oh
but
right, yeah, I have.
they're really useful as well because I can pop them in. They look like an ear piercing, really. And I can still hear people, but I'm not like overwhelmed by that noise. And I think having, and I'm a big advocate of self-diagnosis as well. So having a diagnosis or even suspecting that you are neurodivergent, or actually even just practicing good kind of mindfulness does allow you to cope a lot more with life, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, yeah, again, that self-diagnosis thing, I think it's, I think some people can go around and kind of be like, think that they are kind of neurodivergent or there's something, but are not too concerned about it as well. And they can happily go through life and not really need to look for that diagnosis. And like, I think for some people, like for me, for example, it was just having that clarification that I wasn't crazy. And I think sometimes as well, I think it is needing reassurance. Like I think a lot of people who are on the neurodivergent spectrum and stuff really need to have some sort of reassurance for anything they do. Like anything I do, I need reassurance from. Like whether it be like, in my sport or just like a little, if I'm writing like a little paragraph or, a little article or something, I'll need somebody to say, okay, yeah, this is actually good. Rather than for me to just kind of send something off. And like, for that as well, I just needed that reassurance that I wasn't going crazy and that there is something different about me. Um, and I think
It's
with
that
self-diagnosis,
validation.
yeah, exactly. And I think with self-diagnosis as well is like, it's again, it's advocating for yourself, isn't it? It's kind of going, you know what, I think, and just kind of allowing yourself to understand yourself a bit more and taking that step back and saying, okay, I think there is something different about me. I want to explore this a lot more.
Yeah. And I think some people are afraid to, I don't know whether afraid is the right word, but kind of what you said about when you thought maybe you're ADHD and you felt like you didn't really want to tell people or acknowledge it or kind of make it a public thing. I
Yeah.
think there is that fear that it does make you different, because I mean fundamentally it does, but I think if you can learn to work with your different mind, then it doesn't matter that you're different. Actually, what matters is that you found a way to improve your life or your mental well-being, or if it's I don't know, maybe you started going for a walk once a day. It doesn't have to be anything massive, but that also improves your physical health as well.
Yeah.
And those little things can make a huge difference. Um, I mean, I know you've done a lot of work as well with like children, like young athletes and things.
Yeah. Um,
What sort of advice do you give to them? What kind of things do you discuss, in the sense of, because I think you share your experiences, right, with them, and do you find that, I guess what I'm trying to ask in a roundabout way is, when you're talking to young athletes and you kind of get a sense that maybe they could be neurodiverse or neurodivergent, what advice could you give to someone like
yeah,
that?
I mean, for my work, when I work with young athletes, I don't necessarily I mean, I'm very open about who I am, and if they ask questions, then, it's there. And I've done a talk on being neurodivergent, and it's quite interesting because, like, actually when I did this talk, for example, there was a mix of kids. Some of them, were like neurotypical, and some of them were neurodivergent, and you could see that the ones that were neurotypical, it just didn't click with them at all. But the ones who are neurodivergent, like, it really, really resonated with them. And it was that mix, and that was quite interesting to see. Um, and then when I work with kids, if I suspect that there's a child that is neurodivergent, I don't obviously openly go up to them and be like, "You're neurodivergent." No, I
Good.
and obviously it's you don't want to label people as well. Like, you're more than just what, like, a label somebody puts to you. um I kind of work in a sense where I will coach, like, I will coach to the person's need. So, and I'm not a one size fits all when it comes to coaching. And this is across the board. You could be neurotypical, you could be neurodivergent, whatever. Like, everyone has a very different learning style. And so the way, and, like, I go from experience as well. Like, when I've been coached, I've had coaches who have had just one specific style of coaching, and for them it's like, well, it's worked with all of my other athletes, so I'm going to coach you the same way, which didn't work for me because, again, like, I just my brain works differently. I don't learn how other people work, and I do need reassurance and things. um and so, yeah, I think I coach with a lot more, like, compassion as well, and understanding. So it's, like, I know that, well, like, when you learn to row, I know it's not easy. It takes up, like, it's not just physical effort that you're putting into rowing. It's a lot of mental effort as well, and people don't realize that. And especially with my beginners when they're learning, and it's just saying that, allowing them to make mistakes and saying it's okay. Um, and, like, even with kids and stuff, I think, like, kids and adults, like, teaching kids and adults to row is actually quite similar in a sense. I mean, kids learn a lot faster, but there's still, like, it's all the same almost. Like, people get frustrated when they can't, when they can't do it, when they make mistakes. And, I've been told myself that I'm a very patient coach. And it's literally just because I go, well, you're not going to become an Olympic athlete in one day. And, like, it's taking things step by step. Um, and just, I'll say, like, today we're going to work on this, and you might not get it today, but give yourself some time and space, because your brain is still working everything out. The connections are happening and they're being formed in your head. And whilst you may not get it this week, when we come back to it next week, you know, you'll probably find it so much easier after you've given yourself some time and your brain to make to secure those connections. And like 9 times out of 10, it they come back, and then the thing that we were working on, they get it. um and that's all honestly like super rewarding as well, just seeing that. Like, I've had, whether kids or adults, I've been coaching over the last couple months, and kind of seeing people go from like not really understanding how the movement works to now being able to move so fluidly on the water, on a rowing machine. It's just such a rewarding feeling. And just also understanding it's just because like I've been really patient with them as well, and allowed them to make mistakes.
I think that the at least in my experience, people can be very quick when they can't do something right away to say, well, it's not for me then, is it? And they
Yeah.
don't give themselves that time they need to have that kind of muscle memory that comes in and things like that. And they're just, well, if I can't do it now, I don't want to do it. And I think patience, not just from a coach, but also like on ourselves, is how you can improve with most things in life. I think anything actually you want to do, if you can put the time in, you see improvement.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think like not just patience with athletes, but patience with myself as a coach, and not allowing myself to get frustrated when people don't get it, and kind of allowing myself to explore different coaching styles with my athletes, and getting, allowing myself to understand them a little bit more. And I'm a very big advocate of like asking questions, even if it's a child who children tend to be quite nervous. Not all of them. Like, some are like really loud and they're really into it and they love it. Others, like especially like high school, like middle, secondary school age, can be quite like timid when it comes to, because I think again it's like they when you forget, like when you're at school you don't want to be wrong. So like when I encourage them to ask questions, or I'm saying, oh, so what did this feel like? People are very, they don't always want to speak up. Um, so kind of creating that environment where like there's no right or wrong here. I just want to hear like what you're feeling, and what's working for you and what isn't working for you. So then I know that, the next step is for me to adjust my style for this, to do this or that, for example.
I think the education system, um, especially kind of secondary school or high school, it's all about conforming and just
Yeah.
sitting in a room and listening and learning and being able to answer the test in the way that you pass. And I think when it comes to in that time period, how many people will actually be asked, are you okay? And how are you feeling? I don't think it
Yeah.
really happens. Though it didn't when I was at school, and things change, but I think actually being able to answer the question, how are you feeling, is something that's really hard to verbalize because we're not practiced at it.
No, yeah. And I think it's, again, there's like a whole stigma around it, and which is what, what I want to try and break, at least, is like to allow people to just tell others how they're feeling, not need to worry about being judged. I'm a very like, I love open conversations, and I know that's not for everyone, which is fine. But I'm not great at like surface level conversations. Like, I'm not the greatest at like making and maintaining friends, because I just can't really do small talk. I genuinely just don't understand how like people get from like small talk to like being friends. I'm just like, what? But and so I like the people I make really good friends with tend to be people who are like really open from the start, and we could just have like a traumatic conversation or something, and then like that's it. Um and like there's no judgment there. And I think, again, yeah, like a lot of people just don't want to. I mean, okay, I get it, but I mean, but yeah, a lot of people don't want to kind of delve deeper into things. And I think part of it is because there is that stigma again about being judged, and we're all like social creatures and we want to fit in and we want to conform. And I think conformity as well is fluid. It changes, like, you yeah, it changes through like through time and stuff like that. So like how people act and things like that. And it is nice though that like it's starting to sway in the bit where like people can talk openly about themselves, but there's, yeah, still a lot to work on.
Yeah, I think there's definite scope or room for improvement, but the more people that can have those like open chats and say what their struggles are and how they're dealing with them, then I'm not going to say the easier it'll get, but hopefully the more accepted it will be just
Yeah.
in society to talk about how you're feeling. And if you're not feeling okay, it's like the famous thing when somebody says, hi, you're right, or how are you? And we're all like automatically programmed to say, I'm good, thanks. How about you? And
Yeah.
it's something that is just baffling because we can't always all be okay all the time.
Yeah. And then it's also just kind of like when people do ask that question and then you do say something like, no, I'm not so great today. It's like they weren't expecting that.
They didn't want to know the truth, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, I catch myself a lot of the time having to be like, oh, was that the right response? But I'm gonna go into it anyway. But yeah,
Yeah, the fear of oversharing with people who don't, shouldn't be not subject to your oversharing, but perhaps don't need to know the full extent.
yeah,
Something
yeah,
you have to learn.
exactly. Not necessarily like kind of learning to just not necessarily care as well. I think that's another thing I've had to kind of do is just kind of stop, well, not stop, like I can't help, obviously I can't help but like replay conversations I have and kind of think, judge myself in them and stuff like that. But also like I've been really trying hard to just kind of like, yeah, just not care about what's happened in a conversation as well. So say I have a conversation with somebody or like I have an interaction where I feel like it might have been awkward. Um, I just kind of like I've had to kind of again take that step back and like kind of say to myself, well, it's happened. Um, is there anything you can change? No. Um, and if they felt uncomfortable, then fine. But I'm just gonna do me. And again, like that whole kind of not like what's the word? I think this is slightly going into a different topic, but it's just kind of embracing my uniqueness as well. And I think one of the things that's always stayed with me, or when I realize this, is just kind of like like I think like celebrities or like people out there who we really look up to. A lot of people, if we just met them and they weren't famous, we would think they were really really weird. But because like they're well known, people love them, and I'm like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna try and be like that unique person, whether I'm well known or not. It doesn't matter because there will be people who like me. And like I'm still trying to get over that whole people pleasing thing. I think though, I still don't like it when people don't like me, and kind of trying to move away from that and just kind of accepting that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So yeah, but still working on that bit.
I mean, we can't please all of the people all of the time. And
Yeah,
I hate that saying because I'm like a chronic people pleaser. It's been
yeah,
a part of my personality forever.
yeah,
Learning to say no is
yeah,
a like a massive task actually, but important. Um, I wanted to just go back to you, and this is, not really sport related, but, embracing you and just your uniqueness. I think as well, it's not even making the conscious decision that you're okay being unique. It's like that you're just going to be authentic. And I think that
yeah,
is so powerful when you can say to yourself, do you know, it doesn't matter. If you are overthinking that situation, whatever it is, and oh, did they take it the wrong way? If your intention was good and you acted in a way and said what you wanted because you were being authentic in that moment, I think that there's so much power in the acknowledgement that you were just being you. Have you ever actually, because I've done this, so I want to ask you, have you ever rethought about a conversation you've had or an event, whatever, and actually reached out to somebody and apologized or asked them if they were upset by something you said?
Yes, I have. I can't really think of one to date, but like, yeah, it's definitely happened where like I think I've replayed a conversation or something and kind of realized, ooh, maybe I did say something that was a little bit insensitive, or um, maybe I just kind of went on a tangent and then like did the classic thing where like I started a story and didn't really get to like what the point was, um, or
Yeah,
something along those lines. And then I kind of reached out and gone, hey, if you didn't quite understand what I was saying, or if this seemed a bit brash in a certain way, I've just been reflecting on it, and I apologize if I did say anything wrong or didn't, you kind of got lost in what I was saying. And actually, like, majority of the time people have come back to me and said, oh no, it was absolutely fine, there was nothing wrong, or if there was something that actually was wrong or like did kind of stir somebody up the wrong way, after kind of having explained, just kind of giving a little bit more of an explanation about like the way my brain works, people have been super kind of accepting of it and kind of saying thank you for sharing that, and it and kind of just saying that they kind of understand a little bit more now about how my brain works and how I got to that point. So yeah, but yeah, normally like kind of responses from it have been quite nice. I've never really gone into like anything bad,
good.
especially like, yeah, I think especially like in understanding myself. I can look back on conversations I've had or like situations where I didn't really know, when I was undiagnosed and I didn't really think I had ADHD or anything. And I look at the conversations and I'm like, wow, like I was so brash, and like obviously I can't do anything about it now. Um, and but coming into the realization has allowed me to um, kind of like think a bit more about what I say, or like kind of go back to people and kind of give a bit of an explanation and say, apologize if I came across this way. But I think, there's apologizing for being yourself. And then there's also like over apologizing for being yourself. And I think, you need to understand the difference in the sense where like, there's taking an objective view of like what you did and then going, okay, yes, that might have been construed in a different way, so I'm just going to explain it rather than like really go, oh, I'm really really sorry, I'm really really sorry, like I'm going to explain it and say I apologize if this came across in a certain way, rather than kind of just going and saying, hey, I'm really sorry about the way I acted, and just saying that, because I feel like there's no explanation. And again, that's just kind of like you're not giving yourself the benefit of the doubt or that compassion. Whereas if I allow myself to kind of like not over, again, like there's a balance, right? Not over explain it, but just say, this is the intention. And like that has been like, so useful for me, because then I don't feel bad about myself because I know what my intention was. And I'm just getting that across to whoever I'm speaking to.
Yeah, I think that was my experience as well, was I've spent my whole life growing up being told I'm too blunt. It was always you're a bull in a china shop and you're too blunt and the way you communicate is not good. Um, and I had an experience recently and I reached out to the people and I was overthinking so much, and it was not, they weren't at all. The way I had obviously come across, it hadn't had that same feeling for them. Um, and and I think that is important when it comes to that apologizing thing. For me, like you say, it was reaching out to say, I'm sorry if what I said came across wrong, as opposed to apologizing for who I am. And there are two different kind of things. You don't need to apologize for who you are. And
Yeah.
actually, it's about you by reaching out to those people and then trying to clarify or understand, you are then able to take that forward into your communication and look to improve it, not necessarily for the people you're talking to, but for yourself to then not be overthinking in the future, which is
Yeah. And actually,
great.
that has just reminded me about some of the kids that I coach, um, especially the girls. Um, they apologize a lot, and I think it's very natural as like just a girl in general to feel like you need to apologize for everything that you do. And um, I found in myself when I still do it, but not as much. When I kind of stopped saying sorry for being me, um, or like making mistakes and things like that, it just felt so much more liberating. And it's just not like it's just stopping yourself from actually just saying the words. Like you can kind of feel it, but if you stop yourself from saying it to people, obviously there's a time and place to say sorry. There's sorry when you really realize that you should be sorry, and then there's a sorry for being yourself, like just like you said. Um, and then, but like when you stop yourself from saying it over time, it's just so liberating and like your mind just feels so much lighter. Like yeah, I remember when I think it was like a couple years into rowing before I went professional, before I was like good enough to be professional. So this I was being coached. I was just rowing, and I think I was saying sorry for everything I did, and the coach was like, "You need to stop saying sorry. Why are you apologizing?" And I was like, "Sorry, I don't know." But and then I've noticed that especially in a lot of the junior girls that I coach that they do say sorry a lot, and I'm like, no, you don't need to say sorry. And it's things like as well, like they ask if they can drink water, and I'm just like, if you're stopped and you're not doing anything, drink water. It's a basic need. You don't need to ask me. um and yeah, just kind of saying yeah, and just letting them know, like, yeah, just you don't need to say sorry, especially around me. I like get comfortable not saying sorry around me, because once you're comfortable not saying sorry around me, you'll be so much more comfortable not saying sorry to, whoever. Yeah,
That's lovely because that I think demonstrates how something that you are coaching within a sport environment can actually then go on and help them just feel, I think, more self-acceptance or at ease in other outside of sport situations. Um,
yeah,
that's that's quite powerful, I think, especially for young women.
yeah. And I think like just in general, life is about making mistakes. That's how you get through life. Like, and you shouldn't feel sorry about making those mistakes, because like that's how you learn. Um, and I think going on from that, kind of like failure as well is like failure is super important to learning, because you learn from your failures. And this, like, I think the most experienced people out there are the people who failed in the most things, because they've got that experience, and they've learned, and they've allowed time to reflect on that and move on from that. So, and that's another thing that used to get me as well, was just because I felt like a failure compared to like my peers and stuff like that, because I was always like trying and failing. And even now I'm constantly trying and failing. Just giving myself that compassion and saying, okay, well, what have I learned from this, and how can I move forward from it? And actually realizing that I'm the bigger person now that I've had these failures, because you can't fail if you don't take risks anyway. So, and I think that was one of the things that I always got branded as, when I was at school, was that I was a risk taker. And I think I've held on to that, definitely.
I think there's nothing wrong with being a risk taker. I think as long as those risks aren't, life threatening in any way,
Yeah.
particularly. But um,
Yeah.
no, I think that what you said as well was that you can't succeed by. I can't remember what you just said. My mind's gone. But I was going to link it to something else, which was um, you can't succeed if you just don't even get started with something for the fear of
Yeah.
failing.
Yeah.
and a lot of people are afraid of failing, and you get people who don't take any risks because they don't want to do wrong. And I think sometimes you have to just try.
Yeah, definitely. And I
That's how
think,
you find things you love.
yeah, exactly. And I understand like not everyone is lucky to be able to lucky enough in life to like be able to kind of take huge risks as well. And I completely, I empathize with that. Like I feel incredibly lucky that I'm in a situation where I am allowed to take risks and kind of move on from the like if I fail, it's not a huge hit on me. But this is also why I want to be able to kind of like give back and help others kind of find themselves. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think, that's a really lovely place to end as well. And I'm conscious of, I don't want to take too much of your time up, but I think the conversation has been really, I'm hoping really inspiring for people to listen to who do, feel a bit different and beat themselves up for not being as good as everyone else and needing to rest and things. It's been a really lovely conversation with you, Claire.
Yeah, it's been great speaking.
Thank you. And I'll put all your social links and media in the description so people can find you. If anyone does have sort of any questions or maybe they want to inquire about coaching and things, where's the best place to direct them to?
So they can go to my Instagram account. It's very simple. It's cb.rowing.pt. And if they have any questions or anything, they can contact me via DM. I don't do so much online coaching anymore, just because I've been kind of overwhelmed with a lot of other stuff. But um, I'm not like saying that I'm not doing it. So if people are interested, or just want to get any tips or advice, then they can, yeah, just drop me a message.
That's lovely. Thank you. We'll end the podcast here. So you have been listening to Rhiannon in conversation with Claire Burley, talking about all things kind of how do we sum it up? ADHD, rejection sensitivity, dysphoria, um, things like that. It's been a really good conversation, and let us know in the comments below, what your experiences are, and if you've been able to take any kind of pointers, like putting aside money for ADHD tax, like I'm going to take away. Thanks, Claire, and thanks everyone else. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.